Okay, so I think I shall get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time for this webinar. And I'm more than excited to host this webinar with amazing speakers, Yuta, David, and the wonderful guest, Jenny Lee from Kraft Heinz Company. And we'll be talking about the practice in a hybrid workplace and the building a diverse and inclusive hybrid workplace. I'm sorry. Before we get started, I would like to introduce a little bit of myself. My name is Masahiro Romano. I'm currently a third-year student at the University of Warwick in the UK. I'm majoring management with digital innovation. And I'm currently working as the business coordinator at Ikigai Authentic. And I am more than thrilled and excited to hear about conversation from Yuta, David, and Jenny. On this slide, I will quickly go through what this webinar will go through. And firstly, David will have the opening remarks. Then David and Yuta will have a fireside chat. And after that, there will be a panel discussion with David, Yuta, and Jenny, including the main theme of this webinar, how the workplace has evolved over the past few years, what is a hybrid workplace, what are the important in software and hardware arrangement, and so on. And if the time remains in the last minute, we would like to have some Q&A session from the audience and the closing remarks by Yuta. So I would like everyone to please welcome David from FocusCore. David, thank you for taking your time, and I would like to hear opening remarks from you.
Thank you, Masa, and thank you all for taking time out to join us this evening. Very excited to be hosting this with Yuta-san and Jenny. Apologies on my voice. I basically lost it yesterday. I'm sounding less like a frog today, so I will shout and project as loud as I can. But I was very excited when Yuta had mentioned to me about doing a D&I webinar on the hybrid workplace. We had done previous webinars together, and we had just actually finished our salary survey and had some interesting results about the hybrid workplace as well. So it fit with what we were doing at FocusCore. And then I actually had lunch with Steve Briggs, who's the president of Kraft Heinz, and he was talking about things that Kraft Heinz had been doing, and Jenny was a major component of all that. Plus, Jenny wasn't even in Japan for a lot of what she was doing. She was in Korea and then trying to get back into Japan during the pandemic. And I thought, wow, she's actually living this, working remotely and being able to really motivate her team and change the team in Japan while not here. And I thought that would be a fantastic speaker. So I'm very excited to hear what Jenny will share with you tonight. In fact, we were talking yesterday and we went through Jenny and I went through a lot of interesting stories. So I'm happy to share those tonight, and welcome again. I'm ready to get started, Yuta.
All right. Thank you. So thank you for opening, David, and hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this wonderful event. I was so excited to hold this event discussing about, best practices in a hybrid workplace. So, David and myself has been organizing webinars many times, and this time we start talking. What should be the topic? And also, we immediately agreed, oh, how about hybrid workplace? Because when we are talking with our clients, so they, this topic already brought up. So David, have you recently, heard anything about hybrid workplace from your clients and coworkers?
Yeah, great. Yeah, well, as I alluded to, we just got done with our salary survey, and we launched that last month. And one of the things that really was quite apparent was that people wanted a hybrid workplace, employees and employers. It was interesting that 60% of our clients polled, the employees, 60% wanted full flexibility. So that was quite high, I thought. And then second and third were very close, one wanting 3 days, one wanting 2 days in the office. So that was kind of a tie there. And so I think that is a big change. And I think Jenny will talk about best practices around that. The other big thing is candidates, when they're accepting jobs, I feel really want a policy in place before they join a company. It's not so much that they need to have hybrid, though that is definitely what they want. And we've had candidates reject offers for, 40-50% pay increase and better job titles. But because it wasn't a hybrid, they wouldn't join. And so we've also had candidates that just turned down offers because there wasn't a policy in place and they're worried about what's going to happen in the future. So I would urge people who are here tonight that one takeaway is that having a policy in place for your organization is a huge win to begin with. How about yourself, from clients you're working with?
Well, oh yeah, I was just impressed by the stories. Candidates are very considering, if they are taking the job offer, if they have, the companies has actually policies, which I agree, and I saw the similar kind of similar trend here. Yeah, because now I don't know, what we should call like post-COVID, or like with COVID right now. It's just during the pandemic, many company, all of us are affected, somehow by the COVID. Then, many companies did 100%, remote work environment. But now, the companies are shifting to hybrid workplace.
Yep.
Then, so one of our clients, started approaching to us. Then, like they said, yeah, they share their challenges, which is, they successfully, integrated on the full remote work environment. Then now, so they're the global company. It's a global, they change the global policy, and also, they announce to the employees, and also they try to have them back to the office. But, they said, many of them said, oh, what's the advantage to come back to the office? And also then they are very struggling to, have them back to the office, some of them. But, it's very mixed feeling. Some are, some prefer working from home 100%, but others are really keen to coming back to the office because, they feel isolated, lonely. And so they want to have chat with their coworkers, next to each other. So, that's very kind of hot topic for all of us.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. I think there's a lot of justification that employers, managers need to be able to give to their employees to make sure that people come to the office, that the reason's there. We're thinking through, why do we have an office space now? Why are we gathering? And I think that makes those gatherings even more pregnant with meaning. It's it's much more important now when we gather together and we want to do something, but let's do it for a reason. Let's not, like we used to go to the office and it was just a willy-nilly idea. We just did it every day. Now, if we're going to do it, let's have a meaning for it. Maybe it's because we can't work in our own home. Maybe it's too noisy or too small. But then if we're going to work, let's go to the office, or let's go to a coffee shop. Or let's, we do a focus core. We have a lot of our leadership meetings outside if we can, if the weather allows. So it's always nice to find this flexibility. And that creativity and flexibility is something I've seen pushed through a lot of our clients. They're redoing office spaces. They're looking for ways for more collaboration, and they're looking at ways to get outside the office as well.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I also really appreciate the flexibility because, Masa is based in the UK. So I'm currently in Japan, and also I have been traveling back and forth in Japan and the UK, and also we have other two person working in the Ikigai Authentic, and also one based in Switzerland, the other based in Oxford. So, this flexible work arrangement is a hybrid workplace, that makes us easier to work efficiently. So I just want to share a couple of the data and the stats in the market.
Please do.
So, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030, 2031, 2032, 2033, 2034, 2035, 2036, 2037, 2038, 2039, 2040, 2041, 2042, 2043, 2044, 2045, 2046, 2047, 2048, 2049, 2050, 2051, 2052, 2053, 2054, 2055, 2056, 2057, 2058, 2059, 2060, 2061, 2062, 2063, 2064, 2065, 2066, 2067, 2068, 2069, 2070, 2071, 2072, 2073, 2074, 2075, 2076, 2077, 2078, 2079, 2080, 2081, 2082, 2083, 2084, 2085, 2086, 2087, 2088, 2089, 2090, 2091, 2092, 2093, 2094, 2095, 2096, 2097, 2098, 2099, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 20 Yeah. So this is this slide is articulating the challenge of the hybrid workplace. So since 2020, the pandemic, 252% increase in time spent in meetings. We don't have to move to meetings. So obviously, we feel like we have much more meetings than before. Also, the 32% more chat messages being sent, and so 13% increase in time spent working during the day. Also, 43% of leaders say relationship building is one of the biggest challenges of the hybrid work, which is true. And 43% of employees who work remotely say they do not feel included in meetings. So obviously, like leaders are expected to manage the team remotely more effectively in a different way. Also, 54% of managers feel that leadership is out of touch with employees' expectations.
Wow.
Yeah, there are lots of data available. So can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, also, I'm going to be quick. So most organizations don't yet have a detailed vision in place for hybrid work. Like David said, it's really important to have the clear policy of a hybrid workplace right now. It's more like the where and the when and so who can be eligible. Then, what would be the result throughout, no matter what the working style, and also how often, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, or more like the flexible. So definitely, companies are important. Companies are required to have the clear policy to keep employees engaged. So, I want to hear a lot about, the best practices from Jenny, and also, I want to hear lots of perspective from David today. So quite excited.
It was interesting.
Okay, thank you, Debbie and Yuta. That was the file chat's very interesting, and it was very interesting to hear some new information in regards to the topic. And from now on, I would like everyone to welcome Jenny Lee from Kraft Heinz. And hello, Jenny.
Hi, Nessa.
Thank you so much for taking your time today. And that would be great if you could explain about your topic and work like an owner.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today. First of all, for those who just joined, my name is Jenny Lee from Kraft Heinz. I am head of performance leading Northeast Asia, including Japan and Korea. So next page, please. So today I'll be presenting about what we actually have done after the lockdown or state of emergency has happened in Japan. So when it happened in early 2020, I think everyone remembered how things were very chaotic and panicking. A lot of HR professionals in the school probably would be nodding and agreeing how painful time that we went through during that era. We were forced to switch to remote working, and just like many other companies, we were not fully prepared from the beginning, and so is our customers. However, we took this time as an opportunity to push this agenda and put our employees' safety first, and that's how we were making a great improvement in this ways of working. Soon, obviously, we were introduced with a new technology like Microsoft Teams, IP phones, and slowly adapting ourselves to the virtual world. So in this opportunity, I'd like to share how we have trained our managers with this deck and when we first launched hybrid working. And this will be also a great snapshot to learn about what worked and still is in the learning progress. Thank you. I'll just continue about reflecting how we were when we first launched the remote working. So when we first launched remote working, we were focusing more of the hardware side like IT, attendance management, and so forth. But what manager wondered about is, Jenny, how do I manage my team's performance when I don't see them? So that was the first question that I get. And I think they were right. The way of managing people, what our managers been experienced in the past 10 plus years are usually based on at the office, seeing their teams and how the ways to manage the team is actually at the office. But in this virtual world, how do the managers should be taking time to manage the team? So we believe some fundamental guidelines will be helpful to support our managers. And first thing that we delivered to our people managers were, it's now time to admit that the ways of working is different. And now we have to understand that there is a pros and cons of working at the office and hybrid working. If the paradigm has been shifted and new ways of working, or hataraki kaikaku, is you have to admit that we have to make a different action, make changes based on this new trend. So mindset shift was the first thing that we were training our managers about, how to understand the current trend and try to shift their gear from the existing at office culture to more of the admitting hybrid working. The second thing is about whether working remote or fully at the office, our connection and sense of belonging will stay the same. It shouldn't be faded away, and people should admit that whether you're working virtually or at the office or doing a hybrid way, everyone should still be owning their objectives and their tasks, responsibilities that they are working on. Ownership is a great part of, or what we are proud of as our culture of the business, and extending this to our ways of working is also really important. And that's why we call this new ways of working as we own it. And we own this ways of working and how we are practicing this as a work like an owner. Next page, please. Since everything has been shifted from face-to-face to virtual, as Hasumi-san mentioned just at the beginning, how much time that we are spending online on these meetings. And I have to admit, even today, my afternoon was fully back-to-back with a lot of virtual calls and meetings. Even I was at the office today, I was attending the meeting on the Teams and Zoom, and it's one of those days that you start to understand that things are moving, but we are still very struggling with a lot of virtual meetings. And that's why we are stopping here and think like, are we really doing a right PDCA here? I mean, working at the global company like this, you sometimes have to work a lot with a lot of different countries, cross-regional, and getting a lot of emails from different regions. And you need to really understand that sometimes you have to be flexible working at the random hours. And in order to avoid having fatigue by all these meetings that we have, we'd like to ask people to put people first and setting up the meetings and have empathy when arranging these meetings and events. And in the next page, I would like to share some of the tips on how we actually practice at our workplace. Next page, please. Here are some of the practical examples of what we are doing. Having the agenda, include who's only needed, and be mindful about avoiding lunchtime or Friday afternoons, and don't cancel in the last minute. And all these tips sounds so common, and it's not something super secret or anything, but practicing this is more important. You understand about that these golden rules will really work if everyone practices this. So we were just sending and reminding everyone about be mindful about others' time and try to utilize everyone's time and also your time as efficient as possible is the key message that we're sending to our managers. Reflecting this, work-life balance category in our internal engagement survey was the most improved category, which we are very proud to see that flexibility and hybrid working is definitely what our employee is wanting or demanding. And I guess this is a great output that we are proud to share with. However, at the same time, I wouldn't really call it this in a nice way because there are still some of the tasks that we have to work on. For example, as I just mentioned, the back-to-back meetings and a lot of fatigue created by these online meetings is one thing that we should still need to consider. And managing time and managing people online and virtual and have the right engagement is still a subject for us to consider to work on. So this is me sharing something about our best practices at Kraft Heinz. Now, shall I ask someone to come on the stage, to take the stage? Masa, maybe?
Thank you, Jenny, for sharing the information. That was very interesting, and I think I myself could also learn it. I would like the discussion from going on from David and Yuta. Do you guys have any question from that slides and informations?
Yeah, I found it very interesting, Jenny. Thank you. So obviously one of the big challenges that you mentioned that I think all the clients that I talk to and when I'm sitting down with CEOs that we're always chatting about is first management. How do we change managers? How do we help them manage by objectives? So I would like to hear more around that. And then the second one is how to build the environment that people are sharing. And so, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk more about that, but let's start with management. I think that would be, let's talk around the how you've gone through and helped your managers be able to adapt.
Thank you. I think manage by objective, obviously, this is a key fundamental of how we manage our goals for the year, and that's how I track. As a company, we do have a quarterly development conversation session where the manager and the direct report sits down to review on where they are progressing in terms of the annual objectives that they are setting up at the initially at the beginning of the year. And that's one quarterly meeting that we do to follow up the performances. But in addition to that, we ask our managers to do regular one-on-ones on weekly basis to check in to see where they are in terms of the weekly progress as well. So as a company, we do for quarterly basis, but as a team or as a manager, it will be great if they can actually do the meetings more on regular basis, like weekly basis is more advisable. That's the first thing to work. And obviously there are some of the other trainings that we offer, but as you know, with 721, I mean, theory, basically all the school type learning, there's a very limited input that we could do to the managers, and obviously running by example and also encouraging them and also coaching the managers by giving them some tips and advices of when they do the one-on-ones will be it's the way that we actually leading to our employees.
So are all the one-on-ones and the meetings, are those done online? Are they in the office? Are they doing both?
They're doing both, depending on the availability of these two people. Obviously, if they done the virtual last time, maybe if you're coming to the office next week, we can do it at the office next week, depending on the schedule and availability of these people.
Okay. Do you have a time when everybody comes to the office or that whole teams come to the office to gather and share info?
Good question, because as a team, it's still important that you meet everyone in person. So we encourage our people to maybe set up one day per week to get everyone coming to the office and maybe go to lunch together. It's another suggestion that we are making, and that's actually how we are practicing in our HR team as well. We come to the office usually on Tuesdays, and then we go to lunch together, and any other days in the week people get to choose and drop by into the office as well.
Okay. Is there a time when everybody in the office is together?
The whole office together? No, we haven't set that date. Okay. It's only by team basis.
Okay. Yeah, I know we do. We have our monthly meetings and we have everybody in once a month to try and part of it is just to disseminate information. The meeting's 30 minutes max, but really to get people chatting a little bit. And then we have one leadership meeting that we try to get the leaders together. So that's kind of the other that we do.
If I could complement my comment here, is that we do actually have a monthly town hall, but it's done in virtual because we have 8 regional offices around the country, and we don't want them to feel singled out from this kind of whole all together kind of session. So respecting that, we do actually do a virtual town hall together once a month.
That's great. Super. Yuta, what do you see as far as the trend for companies? Are they doing the similar things?
Yes, thank you for asking. So there are many companies I know, they're setting their kind of corporate policy, how many days a week, they're kind of expected to come, like it's quite depending on the company. It's, one of the financial service industries, they ask people to come 4 days a week, or it's almost like the work from home is optional, but most of the companies I know are more like the 2 to 3 days a week. People are coming, but just as Jenny shared the stories, even though they're in the office, and some companies they're expected not to speak with each other, which doesn't make sense. So still many companies are trying to find their optimal working policy for their hybrid work style, but still depending on the companies, some companies still think they are still within the pandemic, and so other company thinks it's already post-COVID. Then depending on their company's stance, they set the kind of different work arrangement. Yeah, I want to have like one question to Jenny, like it's more practical question. Like, we have been discussing the importance
Sure.
of setting the policy. But just when we come up with work-life balance before, we often talked about their kind of core time, and also the flexible flex time, and the kind of the employee policy, 就業規則. So when we were introducing that new hybrid work policy, were there any conflicts between the existing 就業規則 policy and the new hybrid work style policy?
Good question. Thankfully, we had a flexible working hour existed prior to COVID, so we weren't we were probably at the better stage of introducing hybrid working in that sense. Looking at the work policy perspective, 就業規則 perspective. So in that sense, I guess having the flexible hour was helpful. And obviously, pretty strict 9 to 6, and then you have flexible hour, then you have telework or hybrid working kind of, or remote working kind of stage. It's different phases, right? So how we actually frame that in the policy is obviously different. We also went through how to put the attendance, so actual working hours, clock in and clock off time, all these things. It's pretty strict in Japan, as you acknowledge. So all these we were developing as we were progressing in this fully remote or during the COVID time. So I wouldn't say it was a smooth transition, but there were some lessons that we learned. And also, even you have the policy, you start to understand that people misunderstood about practicing it, and then you've seen some cases happening, and you just realize, okay, this is the area that we need to just rephrase it, or actually need to make it more clear for the people to understand about how to practice that. For example, I worked 2 hours in the morning, and then I commute for 2 hours, and I come to the office, and then I go home again, and then I work there, and then so it's commuting hours are all included as a working hour. So at the end, this person's been doing overtime for 6-8 hours a day, which is not the way we want to see how the hybrid working should be like. So having the flexibility is important, but it wasn't the right message that we wanted to send out. So those kind of things where we are asking, you need to choose a place to work for your day, unless you really need to. For a day, you shouldn't be working from home, coming to office, go home again and work again. Choose which one that you want to work. Choose a place and try to focus on that area. Focus on the place will be the ideal way to go, is the message that we sent it out.
Yeah, that's a great message. I always feel, more flexible we become, the self-discipline to be needed to be. So I think that's a great message. So back to you, David.
Yeah, for the leadership, I was interested in how you built trust and how your leaders built trust across the team.
Good question. I just thought that was supposed to me, so I'm just going to take the stage.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Yes. I think that was the first thing I mentioned. Managers was me. Well, Jenny, I know that we're moving to remote working, but how do I manage the team when I don't see them? So that trust was kind of the fundamental question that they had. And there's no quick answer that I could make. Like, you cannot build the trust with 1 second. Like, you've just seen this person for one day and you have the full trust. It might be a little difficult, but it's a part of your team. And if you want to assign the right tasks to them, you should have the full trust to your team. Otherwise, you cannot really assign the work. So trying to give them the understanding, the logic of what the trust is about was the one thing that I delivered the message to our leadership team. And the other thing is about building the trust with your team is still, you should still invest the time on it. So it's not like one thing that you got the credit and then you feel you don't have to invest any time on it. Like, you should still be checking in and spending some time with your team to build that trust and make that layer thicker and thicker, so that trust will still be ongoing and people will also feel comfortable interact with you online. And that's how the ship should be heading to, is the message that we are sending, because trust is a really big thing. And it's vice versa, not only for the managers but also the direct reports feel they don't feel that the manager is trusting them. It's always by both ways. It's not only the one side that has a doubt about it.
Yeah, I think that consistency over time is a huge component that you talk about.
Yes.
Managers think it just happens right away, or employees think it happens right away, but it really is, you need to follow up. And it's just good old management practices, right? You might delegate something, but you have to follow up. And that's how trust. Yeah. I have one last question that I wanted to ask around management, and it's again the one that the CEOs asked me after hours, is being able to build engagement. And when people are here, there, and not together, it's very hard to build team engagement. Partly because a lot of that engagement is done off the cuff. It's spontaneous. A lot of it's done in person. So a lot of times managers feel, management by walking is still relevant, right? And that's how you build engagement. Or you say, okay, let's bring everybody in and let's do that. Or you go to lunch on a spontaneous with your team. How do you recommend that managers engage and build engagement within the organization?
Of things, I guess. I think you mentioned here already, managed by walking is also still valid in my view. To be honest, you still need that face-to-face time to really make this relationship ongoing and make people feel belonging to this team. So that's something that the manager should always consider. The other thing, lunch is also a good thing. Having that kind of social hours is always a big value to the team. And when we did a virtual meeting, so we encourage people to share about random things. So I sometimes ask, what's your favorite Japanese food, or something that you don't eat, you have, which is your not favorite, or things like that. Just a random question of the day, and go around the table and do this kind of icebreaker chat before really jumping to the agenda. Because I have to admit, when you continue doing a lot of virtual meetings, it becomes a little more transactional, and having that kind of little bit of icebreaker talk always helps to build a relationship, even online.
That's great. I think a few of the things that we've done is making sure that we do a lot of the meetings video. A lot of times we would chat and do chats. We've tried to get off the chats and do a quick video and make it, what are you doing today? How are things going? And trying to build up some interactions that way as well, which is still can be such a challenge. Yuta, did you have?
Absolutely.
Any other best practices that you would have around engagement that your clients that you see happening globally?
Sure. Thank you for asking. So in terms of engagement, so companies are more caring about the people, like continuous people's development in the virtual environment. Because, of course, it's like Jenny shared, it's really important to, ensure that people's engagement. But in addition, people are working for the companies with purpose. They want to grow. Then, especially during the pandemic, companies couldn't offer kind of classroom trainings. And so, we shifted more to kind of online virtual training. And then people want to, learn something new and also like develop their skill set as well. At this time, in order to keep engagement, it's also, company try to find the best way to provide the training and also the opportunity for them to speak up and also grow in the organization. So for me it was unfortunate opportunities because I used to travel much more often, travel to Japan, the US, and the UK to provide the workshops. And so, it's really great to meet people in person, but sometimes, it's more time consuming. But during the pandemic, I had a much more opportunity to connect much more people and also provide more workshop virtually. And also, it's also a new learning experience for me how to kind of provide kind of interactive workshops via Zoom, Teams, as well as other devices as well.
That's great. Thank you, Yuta. Jenny, I want to find out one of the things that I've heard from clients is that they struggle to have employees return to the office after working fully remote. What best practices have you encountered that encourage employees to return to the office?
Thank you. I personally believe there's still merit of coming to the office. The reason behind it is maybe because I work as HR, I do like to talk to people, meeting people, talking about random things. It's part of great fun in the office culture that I like. And that's why maybe I enjoy going to the office a little more than others. My internet might be a little slow, so I'll try to speak a little slow in case you can't capture me. All right. And I felt the same, and I try to initiate the activities or make initiatives like how I think. So there should be people who really want to come to the office. Based on that, we actually renovated our refresh corner and put new vending machine and encourage our people to come and enjoy the drinks together and have chit chat even during the working hours, because we do encourage them that that's done or any like small talks that you do next to the vending machine or at the cafeteria. This is really valuable. That's when the interaction, cross-functional synergies and chemistry, everything emerges from there. And we do value that. We are a culture respecting that small chit chat kind of things at the office. So we really want to encourage our people to chat when you come to the office, and you should enjoy it, and you will miss it if you actually are staying at home working. You might be doing a lot of things focused, concentrated when you're working at home, which is a great value to bring your performance. But sometimes learning and listening to others, gathering and also sharing information, you learn something new that you didn't realize when you come to the office. And that's why we encourage people to come talk to people. And that's one of the reasons why you should consider coming to the office.
That's great. I think that's so important. Collaboration is huge. We do the same, especially with new hires, because they're so impromptu so many impromptu training opportunities for young people or for new people when they start, that you just hear something, go, okay, we can work on that. If you're there at home, you don't have that opportunity, right? So that's important. Yuta, how about yourself? What would you add? For
Yeah, I was also interested, so I would love to answer, but just I was also interested in, your story, David. So, I want to ask Jenny about kind of high, attracting the talent, because, David shared a story about the candidates, turning down their offer because the company doesn't have that policy. So, I want to hear more about how do you think hybrid working arrangement matters in attracting talent? Also, I want to hear about the onboarding process. If the Kraft and Heinz are providing like 100% onboarding training, like the online or like classroom training. Jenny?
Thank you. I guess in terms of attracting talent, maybe David can also give more broad market data, and he already mentioned at the beginning of the call about how this is still highly demanded. I think I wrote it down, 61% of they prefer to do fully remote. So I think that shows how much of this flexibility matters for when someone trying to look for the job or changing their job. So I think from the company's perspective, when we are attracting new talents, having this flexibility is definitely one of the advantages or a merit that we want to sell out to our employees or to candidates, that we have to admit. So future candidates even, and how this will be way is to show our employer branding on how our strength on this and the flexibility, the culture. It shows a lot of things about their brand, the company itself. Having the flexibility means that you have a flexible culture, how people works here, interacts, communication. You can kind of, it's like a one theme, but it's all connected together. You can kind of imagine how this theme will be connected to that company culture. So having that always in our view. And when we attract these high talents to the company and onboard them in the company, when we were fully remote, we had to switch our off or face-to-face onboarding quickly to this online, which was the first time for us as well. I'll speak slow because my connection is unstable, as said. And so online onboarding was very new for us, but what we learned there is it actually helps us to connect with the different city candidates easily, much faster, easier in that sense. So for example, if we welcome anyone in Nagoya, Fukuoka, sales officers, sales rep, we don't have to ask them to travel to Tokyo, nor us traveling to their region. Rather, we can just connect it online and then on board with all these things that we want to deliver for their first day. Company brand, histories, and all these, and much more efficient way. And also teach them very important how to use Microsoft Teams and how to make a call online. It's a step one that everyone has to learn on their first day. So that was the thing that we did for the online onboarding thing.
Oh, thank you, Jenny. So going back to I agree. I also find the interesting data that younger generation prefer returning to the office because they feel more isolated. That's why your story makes lots of sense. It's also going back to the question by David. How to kind of encourage people to come back to the office. So myself and also I feel many companies believe like it's important to focus on something, we couldn't share online. So which is more like the kind of taste and the smell, like more like the experience sharing. Many companies try to have kind of luncheon session, and also, of course, we can have like a virtual lunch too, but we actually, companies actually share the experience, like having the same food, smelling the same, and so many, I heard many companies trying to have some kind of experience sharing sessions, such as like the food festivals, as well as more like the classroom, like the building something together, like focusing on the workshop. So I heard like, there are more and more companies trying to have kind of engagement workshops, such as kind of building the bridge by Lego, and also some other kind of physical workshops as well. So, then like, I heard from many people that, once, they, some people are quite hesitant to, come to the office because, they couldn't find the merit before, but after like experience that, they feel more engaged, empowered by other people to share the experience.
That's great. I know that's one of the things that we did as soon as we could get face to face was go out, and we had team building, and it was physical, and it was with the whole office, and I thought it was profound for all of us to be together and be able to do that. So
how did you feel that time?
it was exceptional. Yeah, it was yeah, to be together, and we didn't take it for granted, right? But it also gave us a chance, because some of these people we never all had met together before. So it was important for us, I think. Before I forget, I want to make sure that if anybody has, one more time, if anybody has questions, feel free to type them in the webinar chat. Jenny, I had another question again about, this is more around D&I. What have you found with a hybrid working style that is effective for D&I, and what has been left behind with a hybrid work style? What have we lost, in your opinion?
I would actually put this probably from the gender perspective, that a lot of working parents actually have gained a lot of work and life balance, but it really depends on the age of their child, because some of them were really struggling working and looking after toddler at the same time. It wasn't that easy. So I think from that perspective, hybrid working is, I wouldn't say, same time, it helps us to balance the work and life, depending on the family situation that you are at. I'm saying slowly because my internet says it's unstable. So don't get me wrong if I sound like a robot. I'm intending to speak slow. Okay. And I think we've seen a lot of different generations taking a great moment with this hybrid working, adapting to have better work and life balance. And I would say once you get adapted to this phase, I don't think we will be able to go back to how we used to work in the conventional way, 9 to 6 fully at the office, because we've seen the benefit of how this virtual remote working has been succeeded into. And if we're going back to the conventional ways of working, I think we are losing a lot of time that we had, all the good lessons that we learned during these past 2 years. So going forward, I think we should take what we have learned through this time and then adapting into our workplace. And I wouldn't even say that we are at the final stage of the new paradigm. We are still at the stage to evolve this from here. And anyone in the world actually do have the right answer for this, in my view. And we all have a different situation. by businesses. So we just need to see what will be the best. And there's a no one size fits all type of thing. So we are working on what will be the best space to work for us. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think that time is one of the biggest elements that everyone across the globe has found. Yuta, anything that you would add, especially with your expertise with companies that you've worked with?
Sure. I was thinking more like the question to additional question to Jenny, like the many companies are still like finding out the right balance of hybrid work style, or like some company think about also the more like the clear policy. So I mentioned it's there is a best practice to clarify how often, where, who are eligible, and also when. And so do you have any kind of other kind of elements which companies should consider when clarifying the policy for the hybrid work style?
Good question. I'm not sure whether we can actually put it in the policy and put it in a fine print or in a very firm way to say this is the policy that we should be following. But as a guideline or suggestion that I could say, and this is the one thing that I found it out from the recent training that I run for managers a couple of weeks ago. Number of hours that we per report is ideally 6 hours per week. And imagine if you have more than 5 people in your team, you'll be spending about 30 hours just having one-on-one with these people. So it seems like a lot of time, and it actually, it's if you're a manager, you'll be like, oh my goodness, that's like, I don't think that's feasible at all. And that's the exact response that I got. And the key message that I'm trying to say here is maybe commit some of the number of hours that each manager should be spending time with the direct reports. Because before I think we all were not only the managers, but everyone in the office, we were taking for granted for how easy it was to interact with others when they were sitting next to you. But when it comes to the virtual world, you just have to admit that you have to take that extra step to spend time with them, whether it's connecting virtually or have a coffee later when they come to the office. So how much of the time that you should be spending with your direct reports per week should be a good could be a good guideline to give a bit of hinters when they're practicing or succeed or making this hybrid working successful in the team.
Right. Fantastic. Oh yeah, in terms of the best practices, David, related to Jenny's point, so I got much more requests about the inclusive behavior workshop, like specializing in the like a virtual work environment. Because this company take it as a great opportunity to reflect what we learned from virtual virtual work style on the inclusive behaviors, also the inclusive meeting protocols. Before even though global companies try to make it much more inclusive and flexible, because of the time difference, because of the locational differences, some people still feel excluded, and some people feel like some people are kind of privileged because of the time zone and the locations. But this time, company try to all the employees experience like the virtual meetings. So that's why they are much more respect and empathy, and especially for the people in the different location and the people in like isolated locations as well. So then like we talk about how we can like arrange the inclusive inclusive virtual meetings, also how we can make sure, for example, like that, especially in the hybrid hybrid work environment. Sometimes, we said, if there are more people in the classroom, then we tended to use the terms like, oh, how about this? How about that? That, the people joining online couldn't see it. So that's why, it's more practical how to change our term as a how to have the more like the effective conversation in the hybrid workplace. So that's a great conversation, the discussion, the workshop, I can see as a trend.
That's great. We had a question from Fabian Beauregard from Hire Planner. Fabian, would you like to speak? If you're there.
Hi, David. Can you hear me?
Can hear you fine.
Hi. I just want to let you know as well that the chat is disabled. I don't know if it's on purpose or not, so I couldn't type my question, which is why I was raising my hand.
Good. Thank
Get
you
your
for that.
attention. So
It worked.
yeah. So just in case if some other people wanted to ask some more questions, but I had a question for. So first of all, thank you everyone for your insight. It was great to listen to you all and learn from you.
We lost your
Lost them, yeah.
More senior or more experienced, mid-career and onwards, prefer to work remotely or hybrid. So I was wondering, what was your take on this? If you experienced something similar in your organization, and if yes, why do you think that is?
Fabian, real quick, say your question one more time because we lost part of you when you were speaking.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Okay. So my question was for Jenny. I heard from numerous companies that junior level staff usually prefer to go to work at the office, as opposed to more senior staff who prefer to work more remote or hybrid. So what's your take on this? And have you experienced something similar in your organization? And if yes, why do you think that is?
Thank you, Fabian. Jenny?
Thank you, Fabian. Do you have a preference on that? One of the trends that we've seen with our junior staff prefer to coming to the office. In our cases, if I reflect back, most of them were quite new to the company. Was the one reason why they feel more comfortable of coming to the office. The other one is that they, depending on their family style, whether they are living in a very compact apartment or arrangement on their living style, they prefer come to the office because physical environment was actually much better. So there was another reason why they prefer to come to the office, was another reason that we heard. And obviously not all the managers prefer to work remote, but there are some with the families or taking work and life balance. There were some who were working more of the remote style, but we've seen one of the guideline there is working remote and taking the right balance is the fundamental guideline for everyone, and which means that you cannot only take one or the other. There should be a compromising point in between that what should be working for your team. So you cannot take what's best for yourself only, but what's working for your team. So as a manager, you should be lead by example of coming to the office to present yourself, and interacting with others, always a good example for your team to take it. So that was the one message that we sent it out. It's not only when we first transited from fully remote to slowly coming to the office, we've seen only very small people coming to the office, and it's only usually the ones who come to the office usually come to the office. If we try to encourage more of those people who are still working from home, there was the one message that we sent it out to the senior leaders.
That's great. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Fabian, for your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yuta, we've come to, unfortunately, 7:30. quite quickly.
Sure. So I'm making the closing remarks and also debriefing the session. So first, like I wanna say a big thank you to Jenny and David for sharing, all of your best practices and also the great perspectives. Myself learned a lot as well, and so there are lots of learning and so the informative knowledge today. But if I take like three learnings. So first one is it's really great opportunity to remind kind of atarimae, kind of common sense inclusive behaviors, like the Jenny's last slide. We say like like the show up on time, don't cancel in last minute, and also the take ownership of the meetings, and also the clarify the agenda. That has been always on, but just this is a great opportunity to remind ourselves of kind of atarimae common sense of the meetings. The secondly, it's like a different management practices that are required right now, especially to secure the psychological safety, how to build a trust between like the team members and also managers. Also, but also they have to coach them and also show much more interest proactively in personal matters to ensure, even though in the virtual environment, we could secure the kind of second banashi, the casual chat, when we are always due in person. The thirdly, this is more like the importance of purpose. It's changed. So that's why it is critical to clarify and show the merit of returning to the office. So I think that's the key learning today for me. And also, hope all of you find it informative and also find the event like the cheerful. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Hope like we will see you in the next webinar as well.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you,
Thank you,
Yuta.
Jenny.
It was very
Thank
good.
you. Thanks a lot.
And thank you
Thank you,
all for
Masa.
attending.